but I realized, as well as I thought GTD figured out in my system, and was working reasonably well with me, I still had this nagging feeling that something was missing.
Mm.
And what I found is that for so many years, I was focused on like the runway, the action levels, and the projects, and that's about it.
Mm.
All right. I mean, I knew I had areas of focus or whatever, but I did not spend a lot of time thinking about them or whatever. It was all directed at the runway level. I never, one of the phrases that David Allen has used in a fairly recent in a video was, I never climbed up the fire tower.
Mm.
You know,
Right.
I realized
Yeah.
it was there, but I was too busy making sure my system was squeaky clean and all of that. And I never spent time thinking about the more big picture about
Yeah.
why I'm doing all of this in the first place. So
Yeah.
that's why, and I needed somebody to help guide me through a lot of that, because now I have found that I seem to operate pretty much out of, and I have for years apparently, and I didn't realize it, which is what caused a lot of friction, is that I like to operate out of the areas of focus level.
Yeah.
Right? Because I have all these different hats to wear. And sometimes I think, okay, I need to spend some time on this particular area.
Yeah.
And so that's been exceedingly helpful.
I kind of want to just make a side note here, just so our audience knows that you're doing the strategy program. You're kind of past foundation into strategy, where we've really gotten into your areas of focus, and I would say the nuance of it. In my experience with you coaching you, it's so deep. There's all this depth and nuance into it, in it, and also, but we're still kind of tweaking the runway, right? We're still kind of, one of the things I just appreciate so much about working with you is we're kind of thought partners in this. And there's just this opportunity to go deep and wide, and also just tweak and fine tune. Like, we've been having conversations after conversations about contexts and what works and what doesn't. And, and also, once again, I think, there's so much depth and nuance into getting things on. You have the model, right? You have the 5 steps and you have the 5 horizons of focus. And then there's all the subtext and the nuance in it. And that's been such a privilege to work with you and kind of getting like into the nooks and crannies of it all.
Yeah, it has. It has been a lot of fun. Because if you've noticed about me, I have a great tendency to overthink things, and I will fixate
in a very good way.
Yeah, but I will fixate on things, and that's part and parcel of me being a professor and a scientist. I really focus in and like, okay, let me see if I can dismantle this and see if I can figure it out. Some engineering threads in there too.
Yeah. Well, it's so great because you also love it. You love the kind of, getting in there, thinking about it. One of the things that, that you and I have really kind of met in the center of gravity around is the letter of the law versus spirit of the law aspect of GTD. So I just kind of would love to hear, today, what your thoughts are about that, because I think it'll be interesting for people to hear.
It is. So early on in the forums, I would realize that I like to do things a little bit differently than exactly what was laid out in the book. And I ran into, not everybody, of course, but there was always a fraction of people within the forums that would absolutely say, well, if you're doing it that way, you're not doing GTD.
Wrong.
And I'm like, what? In other words, you have to follow exactly what David has spelled out. You can't, if you deviate and do way over here, then you're not really doing GTD.
Yeah.
And I never really understood that. And I'm like, well, that's not true. But we would debate and so forth. But some people were pretty well like, nope, that's it. You're not, And so what I've found is, first of all, there is no such thing as GTD police.
Well, sometimes it's internal, but yeah, there's not an external.
No, nobody's gonna, if I decide to do something a little bit differently, I'm not gonna get, a knock on my office door with a GTD badge and saying, oh, you're not. And so I realized that, and it just took so long for me to understand that this is best practices and principles. Yeah, there are some things that you should do, but you need to take this and make it your own,
Yeah.
because the way we operate, that's why we did the Kairos assessment. The way we see things and
Yeah.
operate is
I was gonna
different
say.
for every single person.
Yeah.
And for me, I realized it was a breath of fresh air. It's okay if I do things this way.
Yeah, it's
It
like
works.
whatever works is the thing that works. And, trying to do getting things done in a way that we interpret someone else is doing, it can really clip our wings. And yeah, factoring in cognitive preferences and all of that, I think, one of my, I'm just so adamant about this permission slip, right? To like be curious about what's going to serve you, because everyone has, I don't know how many people do getting things done, much less like they do exercise for the sake of it, right? It's for the result, right? It's like, what's my desired outcome? What is it that I want to shift? And whatever is going to help me get there is what matters most.